Call to order the Grand Forks Growth Fund Committee. We will move right into item 1, roll call.
Crary.
Here.
Holth.
Here.
Kwame.
Here.
Ozowski. Here. Weigel.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
Wolf. Here. We have a quorum.
Perfect, thank you. Item number 2 is EDA, RLF, and PACE loan request by Frost Manufacturing. Mr. Hatcher.
Oh, we need a mic there. There we go. And then additionally, the $11,356 PACE amount. And we are fortunate to have the co-owners of the business, Mr. Aaron Hall, Mr. Killian Erickson, and Mr. Zachary Kenyon here on behalf of the company. So background about the company, Bifrost Manufacturing. They're a Grand Forks established industrial 3D printing company that specializes in custom manufacturing for various sectors, including agribusiness, UAS, and manufacturing. And I'll allow the owners to elaborate further on the customer base when they have the opportunity to come up here. Their mission is to bridge the gap within the manufacturing industry by producing high quality, cost effective, and environmentally friendly 3D printing parts in a more efficient manner. Bifrost Manufacturing, they're recently established in April of 23 at the Brown Corporation facilities at the south end of Grand Forks here. And had shared an instant success generating revenue right when they started back in April 23. Their services include custom manufacturing of carbon fiber or steel parts, welding and fabrication, CAD design, and 3D scanning and CNC machining. And they focus on high demand components that are typically challenging to acquire in the more traditional markets. For the project, it includes purchasing of the specialized industrial 3D printing and scanning equipment and a carbon filament maker, and this new equipment will support their current production orders, improve operational efficiency, and further increase capacity as they continue establishing into their target industry markets. Since its recent opening in April, the company has hired 9 employees to support the current and the anticipated orders, along with the purchasing of this equipment. So getting into the loan details here, the project total amounts of $852,800. The EDA revolving loan fund amount requested is $266,000, like I mentioned, and an estimated rate of 4.5% on a 5-year term. The PACE amount requested is to reduce the interest rate from Gate City Bank loan of $235,000 from 8.5% to 3.5%. And the owners additionally, which is nice here, is that they're injecting an equity portion themselves of $351,800, putting that loan to value amount to 60% there. The purchase of the financing is to purchase the industrial 3D printers, scanning tables, and that carbon filament maker. And the $11,355 amount from PACE is going to leverage a Bank of North Dakota grant of $21,088. The security behind these loans, they're going to be through corporate guarantee of Sundog Mining LLC, personal guarantees to all 3 owners of the company, and a subordinate blanket UCC equipment lien on all the equipment purchased through the loans. I now invite Mr. Hall, Mr. Kenyon, and Mr. Erickson up to speak on behalf of the company here.
Thanks, Kevin. Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Hall. You may know me. I've been here before. Today I come before you as a co-founder of Bifrost Manufacturing. You've heard the details from Kevin about our mission statement, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we came to be. I wanted to tell a story and bring you guys up to speed. So, you know, before when we were up here, we were talking about utilizing underutilized electricity on the grid and a mobile data center for Sundog Mining. We have experienced a lot of growth at that business, and being a local business, we had this huge need for custom steel and custom manufacturing. We went out and we reached out to local manufacturers, and we kind of just received radio silence. We received no quote situations, and we had stuff that needed to get done, and you know, typically it needed to get done before we called. So what we did is we reached out to Killian, who we knew had the capabilities of doing what we need, and we said, hey, what are you doing this weekend? You got to come to the shop and help us out. And here he came. You know, he's working for us on the weekends, and he's working for a local manufacturer in aerospace during the week. During that time, we, heard him around the shop taking phone calls. Well, I don't do that anymore. Well, hey, who was that? Well, that was another manufacturer asking for custom steel. Well, you gotta stop saying that, first of all. And that's kind of how Bifrost was born, is we experienced this local void in the market where we didn't have anybody to do the manufacturing we needed for our mobile data centers. And now, Bifrost, when we sat down, we wanted to focus on now, okay, we have this local market. How do we take this and innovate it and change it in a way where it applies to then a national market? And what we came up with, notably, is the 3D metal printing. So you can take, scan, and print out of titanium, aluminum, stainless steel powder, any part that you would normally have for any other business. So what this does is it leads very well to businesses like UAS, where they need that rapid prototyping. You need to redesign your drone chassis every week. Or agribusiness. Take Farmer John broke his tractor. I just assume all farmers are named John. I apologize. He breaks apart on his tractor, and he's like, based on compression of the supply chain, manufacturing in China, maybe this part isn't even made anymore. I can't get this part. And that's what we really wanted to focus on, is the supply chain and production chain for Bifrost that is centered around the 3D metal printing. So, Kevin has went through the total ask for, so I'm not going to rehash the numbers. One thing I did want to talk about is our workforce strategy. So in North Dakota, it's hard. I'm a small business owner. I have approximately 100 employees. It's hard not to talk about workforce and hiring and what your strategy is going to be to develop and retain talent. So what we've found to be successful at Bifrost is paying them over market with full benefits and retirement packages. And the way we're doing this is through innovation and technology. So we're using the automation portion and then to retain the talent and the employees. So I just thank you for your time. I want to turn it over to Killian, who's going to give you some more engineered examples of this, and we'll go from there.
Hi, my name is Killian Erickson. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Bifrost Manufacturing. As Aaron mentioned, the ag industry is a huge market in this area. So if you get a farmer who has a tractor that was made 20, 30, 50 years ago, finding old parts, especially cast iron parts, is tricky. So with the 3D scanning and metal printing, we can bring that part in, we can scan it, we can 3D print it overnight, and then they've got the part next day. Where, in my experience, custom parts like that or aftermarket parts can take weeks to months for someone to get. That 1 to 2 day turnaround is a huge thing. For the UAS side of things, as you mentioned, rapid prototyping is huge. So with the various equipment, the metal printing and the supporting equipment that we've asked for, the rapid prototyping amongst all the drone startups, all the smaller companies in this area, we're seeing a need for quick turnaround as well as availability for a wide set of skills, processes, materials, and equipment. One of the major things we've come across with the metal printing is a void in the market, not just here but nationwide. So we have various connections that are referring their customers requesting metal printed parts to us because at this time there aren't many options out there. So for metal printing, we would be a first in the nation offering it as a service to our knowledge. To add to the rapid prototyping and reverse engineering, with the 3D scanning, you can get very fine detail. So we can bring a part in, we can go on site somewhere, we can scan something, reverse engineer it. If someone has old school, handmade prototypes and hand-drawn stuff, we can digitize that, we can get it into a modern age where it can be produced with the technology we've got. With that said, there's a lot of lead time just across the board. So with custom tooling, with custom parts, with 3D printing, composites, metal fabrication, there's a huge void in that in-between your local weld shops versus a large manufacturer. So we feel that we will be filling that void. I'll hand it over to Zach Keenan, who's our operations manager. He's going to talk a little bit about sustainability. Thank you.
Thanks, Killian. As Killian mentioned, I'm Zach Keenan, Director of Operations. At Bifrost, sustainability is a very big part to us. We want to minimize our impact on both the environment as well as our local community that we live and operate in. What that means for us is with our filament making equipment that we're seeking to purchase, we'll be able to take our failed 3D prints, and instead of throwing those away, we'll be able to crush them up and remake material to then make into final products, which reduces our waste as well as increases our profitability. Also, we'll be able to take objects like plastic water bottles, and instead of those ending up in landfills, we're able to once again crush these up, make it into new material, and then into a final product. I'll pass it back to Aaron to close.
I just want to say thank you. You know, I feel, I guess, you know, my banker says I have imposter syndrome because I'm so thankful from the support that we've had from our community thus far, not just today, but in the past. So, you know, thank you guys for your time. This money for us is crucial for the next step. So, you know, we feel confident we can step into this, you know, local marketplace, but the technology we're asking for today allows us to then step into like a national void. Killian talked about our referral partners, they're nationwide. He talked about the you know, local drone industry that we have that's growing here and can use this in their growth. And I just want to reiterate that this is for that next step to take us to a national level and, you know, see our success there. I'll open for any questions, if you guys have any questions.
Any questions, Mrs. Osowski?
It says on here that the address is 1809 13th Avenue North. Is that where you guys will be doing this 3D printing at?
No, we in the process of this application moved out to Brown Corp, which is 1213 Ryland Road. So that's where we'll be doing it. It's where the shop is. We needed a bigger space.
So this will be, I don't know where that is, where
It's
Ryland Road is. Is that like far enough away from a residential area? Because I know that I've had complaints. I think that's your Bitcoin mining factory. Is that it? No? Oh, okay. I thought I read on here that you guys were a crypto mining company.
Sundog is, but that's
Sun-
not our site.
Oh, that's,
our sites are-
that's not your
no.
site. So you guys have the same name as the crypto mining company?
Councilmember Osowski, the firm that you're talking about is in and around kind of where the North Dakota Mill and Elevator is on the other side of Mill Road.
Right, yeah.
And they're known as Northern Data
Okay.
Incorporated. So not to confuse, their Bitcoin was more of a mobile facility, whereas the one that was some concerns with fan noise is more of a
Right.
permanent location, of which, for the record, they're looking at a new location that would be away from residential areas. And when the gentleman says Brown Corp, it's to the south and west of Grand Forks, so in and around where the Merrifield overpass is.
Okay.
And they would be on the west side of where I-29 is, in that corner.
Okay, I have no further questions. I move approval.
We have a motion by Ms. Osowski,
Second.
second by Mr. Holth. Do we have further comments, further questions?
I just had a couple quick questions, if we don't mind. So with those 9 employees that are projected, what are those positions that you're looking at, and how does that help you with kind of your bandwidth and also your revenue growth over time?
So the main role amongst those is employees coming from a machinist background, CNC machining, 3D printing, automation. The automation is a huge thing, but it does require someone to keep it running, as well as just traditional fabricators, welding fabrication stuff to support the industry, and then a little bit on the engineering side for drawing, reverse engineering, that sort of thing.
Okay, so then how are you, what's your plan for, say, growing the business, getting word out across the country, if this is going to bring you to that national level, how are you working on that, and what's your strategy in regards to doing that? If, let's say, the bulk of those 9 positions are related to actually, you know, manning the machines and running them, which is great. I mean, we've got to prototype all that, and we've got to get the parts out, which is awesome. How are you planning to do that and scale that marketing and outreach effort at a national level?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Whitney. I'll answer this just because, you know, in the past, scalability is something that, you know, that rapid scalability that we've had experience with. So we've already entered into negotiations with Brown to expand our building. So I think the big thing with, you know, growing your operation, especially in a physical space, is floor space. We've hired a 3D or independent marketer who is familiar with the space, 3D you know, manufacturing and whatnot. And he's doing the videos, the social media and whatnot to put that out. And then we're also partnering with, say, you know, your locals like Bill Adams in the UAS sector, as well as UND, Center for Innovation, stuff like that. Excuse me.
All right, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
No, it's good for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Crary?
First of all, appreciate you guys coming in. Mr. Dell, again, I guess. But I have a question. So in regards to from loan repayment, I think the idea is great. It feels like you're meeting a good niche market. From a repayment perspective, though, that growth that you're anticipating from a national level, when you're factoring in your pro formas, like how much are you baking in from the regional market versus your growth, and how does that work backwards just from a profitability and loan repayment?
So right now we're using that local regional market to essentially carry the loan for, you know, the next step. So when you look at these machines, you kind of have to look at utilization. So, you know, on a 24-hour scale. A lot of the times these things can be profitable for a business, even when they're not being manned and you're not there. Something you click, you come home in the morning and it's done. So that's what we're using is that local need and marketplace for the next step, which would be, you know, carrying the loan value, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Seeing no more comments, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Good luck.
Thank you.
We will move on to item number 3, authorization to bid second floor renovation of the Hive. Ms. Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Weigel. I'll just get the floor plan up so you'll have something interesting to look at. When we were here last, earlier this summer, to get authorization to extend JLG's contract to design this second floor remodel, we were looking at a white box remodel of about 5,000 square feet in the neighborhood of $650,000. We have since added some square footage and refined that, so our budget is now closer to $875,000, but it is still the same white box concept, which is basically no furnishings. We're just giving a blank canvas for future tenants to furnish and equip as they see fit. The price has gone up. The item of note in terms of construction costs is the use of furniture partition walls. That is, in my mind, it's like a cubicle wall, only it's floor to ceiling, so you get an actual office with a door and it's lockable. The advantage over conventional studs and drywall construction is that added flexibility. If you look at this plan, you can see we've kind of got it set up as 5 suites. I don't know if I can get, anyway, okay, here we go. These small offices with these furniture partition panels, they could be expanded from 3 into 2 large, anyway, you can move walls relatively easily. This also gives us the ability to add more offices once demand warrants it. So these 5 suites, kind of hard to see on the full screen, but each of the 5 suites could be rented to an individual tenant, or those smaller offices within each suite could be rented out individually. Again, this is a tech accelerator, and we kind of expect to have high turnover and lots of movement and growth with our tenants. So we think that this furniture partition wall model really is a most cost-effective way to do it, assuming that we will be getting requests to alter the space in the future. In terms of budget, the $650,000 was budgeted as in our capital reserve budget in 5996. The added approximately $225,000 would come from unrestricted cash. In terms of demand, Johnny Ryan is going to give kind of a general update on the Hive, and he can talk about who he's talked to in terms of tying up some of the second floor space, but all of the first floor space has been leased up or is full at the moment. And so really the only space that we have available is space that has not been fit up using EDA funding or some other funding source. Our pricing model is for a conventional lease, which would be for more or less a full suite. We're looking at $20 a square foot with a 5-year term, plus that $150 a month per employee membership fee to kind of cover it's a very high amenity facility with relatively low amount of leasable space for the square footage. So that's our approach to, in lieu of a CAM charge, we have that per head fee. Anyway, that's the pricing for the full suite lease model. For those smaller offices, those are strictly month to month, and we're looking at $750 a month, and that's what our first floor offices are that are fully leased up. In terms of demand, Johnny will talk about that in a bit, and the revenue, Andy has put together a pro forma that we believe has reasonable assumptions, but of course we're just using a crystal ball to predict the future. But long story short, it looks like we would hit the break-even point somewhere in year 6 in terms of recapturing our fit-up costs. That would not be, net, but just in terms of gross receipts and the cost of the fit-up, we would probably be made whole in about year 6. The floor plans in front of you, this particular one is what we propose. The second option shows how with those partition walls, the space could be expanded to more of those small offices. If that proves to be where the demand is, then we could add those relatively quickly. Sean Seneschal from JLG is in the audience. If you have architectural questions, and if you have questions on the pro forma, I'd refer those to Andy. But other than that, I'll give it a shot at answering any of your questions. We're asking today for authorization to let JLG finish the plans and get this thing bid.
Perfect. Mr. Crary.
I'd like to, Johnny, if you don't mind, maybe having kind of an update on just the overall, the demand for the leasing, if that's okay, or
I think that's
Richards
next.
or, okay.
That's our next
I'm jumping
item,
ahead,
but-
I'm jumping, okay, my bad.
No, you're good. I think I'll leave this slide up here. So yeah, we, our first floor lockable offices, which are under here, but on the first floor, those are all signed leases. We've had that now for about a month and a half. We've been full and kind of waitlisted on the first floor. In addition to that, we have about 8 other flexible memberships. So we're up to about 17. And so with that demand, we basically have a 100% signed letter of intent, which they would sign even more than that. Right now, we're just not ready for that, just given that we're just getting the blueprints together and getting approval and asking for approval. But if you look up here, this tenant suite basically is 700 square feet. This top one is the Grand Sky Suite. So this is a custom-made suite just for Grand Sky. So they have an entrance with 4 desks. So they'll have 4 members plus 20 square foot. Plus there's a private war room. They call it Idea Lab, it's a fancy term for a conference room, but it's only accessible via the Grand Sky Suite. So everything up here is Grand Sky Suite. Just at our event on Tuesday, Saikasui Aerospace, they wanted to get into the first floor originally. That was full. Now they said this is even better timing for the second floor. We said this will be most likely ready to move in April. That's when they're planning on deploying all their new hires to Grand Forks. So they've committed letter of intent to this bottom whole half, and there's
slight customization, what they want for the fridge and small stuff in here. But this whole top third is spoken for. And I have 7 other companies that I've been talking to for months. There's 2 that fit really well with the Grand Sky Sekisui that will most likely take 1 or 2 offices here. So we're just trying to figure out what that looks like. They're bigger companies. We also have to take into account that on the first floor, we have some companies that, they just made their first hire last week, a couple of them for Grand Forks. And so the idea is that first hire is going to grow their whole presence here. So if they take up the first floor office, most likely number 2 and 3 from like an MTSI, which is a major company. They had their CEO through here last week. They, second and third will probably go into 2 of these offices. So it might be a kind of mishmash of employees from different companies. But if there is somebody that comes in, and wants to commit to this entire space, we're kind of keeping this layout so that it's possible to do that. These flexible walls that we're talking about basically make it so we could have 2 adjoining offices with the separation in between and doors, kind of like you can see over at Norby's workforce, or we could split up any number of ways. But the demand is definitely there. I've seen from the first 4 months working for the city, working for the Hive, the demand was already really high for UAS activity at the Hive. And then in the last 6 months, and more so specifically the last 3 months, demand is absolutely shot up through the roof. And that's pre-announcements for TRMC, which is like fuel on the fire. So a lot of these companies, I look at it, most of the ones that we're signing leases with now are brand new to Grand Forks. So we weren't talking to them 6 months ago or 8 months ago, but now in the last 6 months, we talked to them. They made site visits. We've formed a relationship, and now they're really committing to Grand Forks in a big way. And now you have the TRMC announcements, which these companies are all involved in that. So recent tenants that we've signed are MTSI, KBR with Colonel Curry, Sekisui Aerospace, and then Grand Sky basically said, we're going to commit to downtown. This is our starting point for employees, and it's going to grow from there. And that's just for their new, that was pre kind of TRMC as well. This has been a blueprint mock-up for Tom Sawyer Space for about 60 days now. So that's kind of where we're starting. It's pretty realistic that any one of these companies could take a larger portion, but then the other 7 that I'm talking to, those are serious companies that I believe will be in the Hive in the next 4 months. I'm just not mentioning ones that are just interested. So it's like what I'm bringing to you today are the ones that are very committed. They would already sign a lease if they could. Like Sekisui said, we're not there yet, but they 100% want this, at least this big of a space. And that's their first interaction with Grand Forks, which is amazing. So these are, amazing companies that are committing to Grand Forks, and they all have a very good relationship with the Air Force Base and with Grand Sky and that whole community. So it's really adding to kind of the core mission of our space. If anybody has any questions specifically about how we got to this layout, I'd be happy to answer them. Let's see if I can show you the whole thing. So what we had before, this bottom right suite was, this was Air Autonomy suite, now Thread. We had an issue with the flooring, so there was just kind of an opportune time for them to just consolidate to this whole suite up here. So this is just basically one more little fix, and that's ready to go and rent out, and it's a very large suite. And all this is going to be 20 a square foot, and we haven't really had many pushback on that. And then this will be another suite that we can basically leverage. We have a local company that's been talking to us about putting 4 offices in that. So this would be more like a custom for one big company, and we hope to kind of do that so that we don't have to piece all this up. But this is really good square footage for revenue. And then all these can kind of be done a different way, where these could be individual like Zoom call spaces, but they could also be like a 1-person rentable office if, for a little less money if people want. And it gives us a ton of flexibility. I think the demand and the value and the price is only probably going to go up. I think right now it's a killer deal if people are paying $150 to be in this space, to be in this community, be in the kind of the events that go on and the access you have to interacting with business contacts like Tom Sawyer and people at the base. I mean, you can't just drive out to the Air Force Base and show up and say, hey, I want to have a coffee with lieutenant or commander, whoever. So it's been great. Last week we had a lot of action. We had on our first floor, it's under this makerspace, but our glass conference room, we have a 100% bid from O'Leary Ventures. So we're just working with Dan Gossett's team to get the final contract to them. So for 20 grand, they're doing the naming rights O'Leary Venture conference room. That's huge for us. Everybody that's heard that is wanting to be a part of, you know, the rooms next door and who's putting their name on the huddle rooms across the hallway. So that's really been a huge thing for us, and it's a great commitment from O'Leary Ventures to want to kind of dive right in or all in with us. And they sponsored our event last week as well. So we're just getting a lot of activity from groups like that, and a lot of our tenants are talking to O'Leary Ventures on various things. We've had a ton of events since May. We had the fashion affair, which for that many people in one building went really, really well. I don't even think I found anything spilt on the carpet. So that was great. Not the normal kind of event that we have, but a lot of good feedback, and it was a blast. And I think a lot of people in the community kind of just got a quick, what is this place, and you know, what is it about? We've had a few events. Grand Sky has hosted an event there that went really well. Had Secretary Rumsford from the DOD that's running the TRMC project. Last week, we had over 150 people from the summit leave the summit, come down. Some took the bus that we provided. Others just met us down here, and it was absolutely packed. And, you know, we had, I think, over 20 people from the TRMC, which for that many people from that government project, that's like everybody is just kind of swarming to meet these people and interact with them. I think Northrop, it was cool to just kind of be at the summit and have people ask me, hey, we need this really private room. Do you have something that we can use tonight? And we were able to accommodate, like TRMC met with Northrop Grumman the night of our event. So we're giving a tour, and Mayor Wojcinski walking by, and they're actually, you know, we're not staging that. That's just the demand for the rooms. And then we had the EDC event last Monday, and, you know, we're getting regular events like that, board meeting type events. We started our upskilling program on Friday. I as a drone manufacturer myself, and in that industry, I can tell you that the knowledge that Professor Joe Vosick gave to the group, there was probably 15 people in the group asking very specific law questions around if I'm building this, or if it's made in US, or if I'm flying over someone's property, or it sees this, what is legal, what is not, and very, very specialized experts in the room were all pretty much incorrect on every answer, every which way. And there was a lot that he would say, I don't even know, this is just so new territory, but it was awesome. And our members all were able to attend that for free, and I think it was $100 for outside personnel. But we have another one coming up with specialists from Fargo for UAS, commercialization and patent law. So that's, you know, very specialized training that we're giving, and this is all based on feedback that we got when our tenants come in. We say, what is it, something that would fill a need, a gap for your workforce? You know, is it soldering? You know, it could be something like that. Is it programming? Is it coding? Is it something with law? Is it setting up a business? So we really want to tailor that to what they actually need, and these classes have been great. That class personally for me was probably the best hour of knowledge I've probably been in 5 years. So we're definitely going to do that again. The UAS Summit was super successful. We had a ton of traction. I gave a short talk on just what the Hive is and how the city's been behind it, and how this is a city thing for everyone else, and trying to just create that spot for everybody to grow. And I got a ton of feedback at the end that, you know, people wanted to come check it out, come tour it. We're interested in having their UAS event here, and we said, you know, when it's mission related, we don't charge for having an event inside of our space. If it's non-mission related, we have hourly fees that we charge. But there were groups that were in Colorado and Virginia that said, hey, we'll sponsor a really great UAS event once a quarter, fly to Grand Forks, pay for, you know, food and whatever, and invite everybody, and have a great topic on, you know, something very specialized, and they would cover it, and they would put that commitment in. Just because we said you could come, we won't charge you. If it's a relevant event, this is great for everybody in the community. Our social event was awesome. And then we've had a lot of students come through lately. We're offering it up that students could come use our space for 3 months. They could study, they could work on flight logs, they could interact with our members. Basically, it's a way for either UAS students or engineering students to not just immediately move before they graduate. So rather than take a job in Milwaukee, take a job in Minneapolis or Chicago, they can at least see the community. You know, they can see what's in Grand Forks, and then kind of get used to being in this environment that they won't find anywhere else. And also, most of our tenants would immediately hire every student from, for sure, aviation, for sure, UAS, and potentially engineering, you know, if they got the chance to. So they can see kind of that immediate connection and not leave Grand Forks. So we want to make that kind of the student area where there's maybe like redundant TVs with weather all over it, things that are really nerdy pilot stuff, and make it just kind of their own, only they can get into it. And give them a space that even if they just want to study or apply for jobs elsewhere, that's fine too. So that's, go ahead.
Mr. Ryan, we do have another meeting here at 5, so I
Sure.
do want to get
Yep, I'm
through a
done.
couple more things. Thank you for the update.
Any questions?
Yep. Sure.
So how long does it take you to kind of like put up and dismantle these walls?
It's not instant,
Right.
but it would be a matter of probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, 4 to 6 weeks. And it would be quiet and clean as opposed to drywall dust and demolition.
I do like the walls, the movable walls. It's an excellent idea. How much, like, who's going to be putting these up and taking them down?
Well, the ones that we have spec'd are purchased through Norby's. So it would be similar to if you purchase cubicle walls from them, you order them and they do the install. Or if it's, in our case, if it's just rearranging, then they would do that. Do they do that on an hourly basis, Sean?
Okay, so Norby's would be the people that if we wanted to retrofit the area, they'd come in and redo that at an hourly rate, but we don't know what that is, correct?
Correct.
And then what happens if, just say, like, a tenant in one of these big suites, like they're renting the whole thing and they want the layout changed in their big suite? Are we going to do that for free, or are we going to charge them then to retrofit their space?
Our concept is we provide that white box blank canvas. If a tenant wants some sort of specific fit up or customization, that cost is theirs. And then either upfront or amortize it over the term of the lease.
Yeah, just to clarify, not all these walls that you see here in the drawing are going to be modular walls. There's quite a few that won't be. The whole top suite won't be. And the bottom right half of this won't be. And some other ones in between. It's more the smaller ones,
Right.
so we could join them together if we wanted.
I'm just wondering, like, just say someone, rents the space, it has 1810 in it for the square footage, if they rent that entire area, and this is what they say they want, so we retrofit it that way, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, now we want more offices within our space, and we're going to charge them to
Yep.
redo their space, correct? Okay. No further questions. I move approval.
We have a motion. Do we have is there a second before comment? Second by Mr. Glavamy, Mr. Wolf.
Thanks for the update. Exciting to see the progress. Just more question on it. I know these are projections or guesses, best guesses, but when you look at talking about revenue, it looks like estimated maybe 70,000 this year, maybe in year 3, 200,000, and the modeling that we're putting together at that level of revenue, or is it cash flow positive? And any comments? I heard something about year 6 recouping. Is that cash flow positive, or is that recovering costs?
That
Any
would just be recovering costs,
recovering all costs?
all the fit up costs that we're talking about.
Yeah. So after
Not
years.
operating costs.
No, okay, but how about, what does it look like from a cash flow on an ongoing basis at, let's say, $200,000 of revenue?
So what we're going to do, I think, is our next step. We're working with Johnny and Maggie to build out a broader operating budget, because we don't want to look at just the second floor in a vacuum. We are, for this purposes of this project, just to get a sense of, the revenue side and the cost side of this particular project. But we also want to factor that into a broader, to get to the point of answering your question, how is this, the revenues from this project and the broader revenues from the building, how does that look from a cash flow perspective? So we're working on building out basically a similar spreadsheet that led us to this projection, to be able to kind of track that on an ongoing basis, to help us inform, which I maybe should preface, I guess, with the assumptions that we have, I think are probably fairly conservative. They are, a bit crystal ball-y to a certain degree, but I think they're fairly conservative assumptions in the sense that there's no assumption of rate increase. It's basically what we're charging now over 5 years. So, which, as Johnny just said, for that second floor space, we'd likely look to increase that in the near future anyway. within the first couple of years, I would think for sure. But that's not factored in here. We also have kind of ballpark figures for vacancy rates. You know, it's difficult to predict that, but given the strong demand that we think we have right now, I'd say that what we have plugged in there is probably fairly conservative. So those revenues, it would mirror that, I guess, as being fairly conservative. We also this concept shows sort of a scalable concept. So it's based on this base level of fit up is what these projections are. Should we choose to add additional offices or, pods or cubicle, other things that we've kind of explored, just kind of see where the demand goes, that would be revenue in addition to what's in the projections. So all that's to say is that I think the projections we have here in those figures are probably fairly conservative. But we hope to include both this and then kind of a broader discussion into that overall cash flow piece of the building.
Ms. Whitney?
Yeah, I think just to add my question out to Mr. Wolf, can you walk through the assumptions on this space in regards to those vacancy rates or tenancies, and that I believe this is non-EDA space, and what are your assumptions related to that in terms of length of time in that space and what those assumptions are and how that's kind of figured into your cash flow, say, return model, because I know there is a difference between the EDA space and the non-EDA space. So how is that all figuring into the assumptions that you're making in regards to who's in that space, who's not in that space, and why?
Well, in terms of our lease model, we're looking at a 5-year term at $20 a square. The EDA side, we were limited to 36 months for a tenant. So we expect turnover, but if we're looking at the large space that we're using a lease model, that's what we're starting with. Probably incorporate a CPI escalator, just given that we're living in the inflationary world these days. The lockable office approach, as Johnny said, those ones on the first floor are all leased up, and the general consensus seems to be that $750 a month is a bargain, given what you get and the flexibility that you can get out. So that's our model going in terms of vacancy rates. I know, Andy, well, I'll let you talk.
Well, you're probably going to say what I was going to say anyways. I think we tried to encapsulate that within the vacancy rate, which is not a perfect metric or assumption, given the rapid turnover, but also the kind of counterbalance to that is the rampant demand kind of that we've seen. It was difficult to figure out exactly what the right balance was for those vacancy rates. Additionally, with not all the offices, well, we hope all the offices are going to be full right out of the gate. That would be ideal. In terms of projections, we went the opposite way, and in year one, if we just projected an 80% vacancy rate for the first year to get some scale, to get folks in there, I think that's what we landed on for year one, and then scaling down to 50% and 20%. So again, I think hopefully fairly conservative figures on that piece to try and hedge against some of the concerns you're, I think, highlighting, is that, there's a lot of uncertainty and turnover and length of stay. We anticipate that kind of rapid turnover, we hope, in a lot of these areas. We also penciled in, though, kind of an option for if we can get a company to come in and lease out a whole suite, which is great. That means they're bringing that many more people here to work here. We also have that kind of as an alternate penciled in for revenues. Net, it does yield less revenue. Obviously, it's almost like a buy in bulk sort of deal. So there is a difference in revenues there, and these projections reflect the individual office approach, which I think is what we're moving forward with right now. That's enough rambling, I think.
Yeah, no, I guess my question would be, is there any difference in pricing for, say, someone that would sign a 5-year lease to think about cost structure and thinking about revenue models versus I'm a short term, I can only be there for 36 months versus I'm a larger corporation, listening to Johnny with some names of larger corporations that could pay market. Is there any consideration that could be a possible piece of this revenue model to bring down that number faster, given that those are companies that could probably pay that? And just wondering where that may or may not be figuring in, because in the non-EDA space, you have the flexibility to do that.
Right. Well, our current model is kind of a trade-off with stability versus revenue, because, as Andy said, if if we lock somebody in for 5 years at $20 a square, we generate less than if we were to have all of those small offices 100% leased up for a full year. It's just that that may not be as realistic in that, you know, if you can get out with 30 days' notice, companies will. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's kind of our approach is stability versus cash.
Is it possible to maybe next month or whenever you guys are ready to just have a pro forma, just kind of have all this penciled out on a spreadsheet, just to kind of break down, and we can see what where the next year what it might look like, next 2 years, and once you get stabilized at year 5, just kind of the overall hive in general. And obviously, it's a little more nuanced there, but it'd be nice to just try to see where your heads are going and where that trajectory's at.
Sure. This is an ongoing topic on the to-do list, so we'll get that to you.
Councilmember
Mr.
Weigel,
Field.
I know Marine has presented to the EDC and others, you know, where we basically, so over the 5-6 year period of time, it will be revenue over expense equal. I think this is even going to be better because if you look at the building across the street, Franklin and 4th, they're not going to have a lot of office space, permanent office space, which means the office space in the hive in this is even more valuable. And so I think to Ms. Whitney's point, we're going to be flexible. That's the other word. And so we can look at longer terms, we can look at different ways to do this in this space, and there's not a whole lot of options. And if, as Johnny has said, if we have all this demand and there's not a whole lot of supply, it really should, the place should come to us as we move forward. It's just how we execute and be nuanced and in this space that we can. So I think the future's bright. We'll bring that back to you and demonstrate that to you.
I would say I'd like Ms. Whitney's idea on the 5-year versus the others of how we can explore that, you know.
I think we got to carry on here.
We do. We've got 13 minutes to finish up, and we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. We've already covered the Hive update, so we'll move on to item number 5, and I believe Andy's going to cover those pretty quickly.
I am going to cover very quickly. We've got just one, I think, to provide you an update on is Cole's Detailing from, I think, from last month. Was able to make contact with him and the folks at the SBDC and confirm today that they have an appointment, time to meeting of the minds, I guess. Sort of gave an informal deadline of, you know, this has gone on for a while. So we'd like by the end of the year to have a restructure request before this body of how we're going to move forward effectively with them. So other than that, I have no updates.
Thank you. Is there, Ms. Osowski? Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Second. Second by Crary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We are.